means. David stared at the letter in disbelief. All of this because I parked in my own driveway. He had no idea what was coming next. He didn't know that a simple fine would become a lawsuit. He didn't know that HOA lawyers were already preparing papers. He didn't know a judge would soon be involved. But it was already too late. One unpaid fine spiraled into a legal nightmare. David thought he was just ignoring a fine. He didn't know he was walking straight into a legal trap, one that had already closed behind him. It started like any other Wednesday morning. David was sipping coffee, looking out at the calm, quiet street that now felt more like a prison yard than a neighborhood. Then came the knock. 3 sharp taps at the door. When David opened it, a man in a gray suit handed him a thick envelope and said 5 words that turned his stomach to ice. "You've been formally served, sir." Inside was a court summons. The HOA was suing him. The charges? Violation of HOA covenants. Failure to pay imposed fines. Non-compliance with board directives. And unbelievably creating a hostile environment toward community leadership. David sat down hard on the couch, flipping through the pages. The documents were heavy with legal jargon, references to bylaws, and attached photographs of his car in the driveway, his lawn mid-mow, even his mailbox, as if they were pieces of evidence in a criminal case. There was even a bill, $3,872.46, the total amount the HOA claimed he owed, including late fees, legal costs, and administrative penalties. All over a car parked on concrete. On his own property. He called a local attorney, a soft-spoken man named Greg, who specialized in HOA disputes. After reviewing the papers, Greg leaned back in his chair and said something David would never forget. "Honestly, you signed a contract when you moved in. The HOA isn't just a club. It's a private governing body with legal power. In some ways, they have more control over your property than the city does." David couldn't believe what he was hearing. "So they can just fine me into oblivion? For rules I didn't even know existed?" Greg nodded slowly. "If it's in that covenant you signed, yes. Most people never read the fine print. That's where the trap is." David clenched his fists. "I'm not paying nearly $4,000 because Cheryl has a god complex." Greg sighed. "You can fight it. But understand they've probably done this before. And they always come prepared." A few weeks later, David appeared in small claims court. It wasn't a grand courtroom, no jury, no big drama. Just a judge, a clerk, and 2 sides of a civil dispute. The HOA had a lawyer, crisp suit, briefcase, printed exhibits. David had his folder. The lawyer opened with a calm, rehearsed tone. "Your Honor, my client, the Clearwater Heights Homeowners Association, has made numerous documented attempts to bring Mr. McMillan into compliance with community regulations. He has refused to cooperate, disregarded repeated notices, and has cost the association time and legal resources." She handed the judge a packet, dozens of photos, emails, printed violation slips. Then came the kicker. Furthermore, Mr. McMillan's attitude and behavior have contributed to a hostile environment for HOA board members and neighbors who simply want to maintain standards. David stood, heart pounding. "Your Honor, I'm not hostile. I just parked my car in my own driveway. I repainted my mailbox. I mowed my lawn. I didn't even know most of these rules existed until I got fined for them." The judge, a tired-looking man in his 60s, held up the covenant document. "Mr. McMillan, this is your signature." David nodded. "Yes, but I didn't know." The judge interrupted. "The HOA has authority under the signed contract. Whether or not you read it in full, it is binding. Legally, the HOA is within its rights." David's jaw clenched. "But they're abusing that power. These aren't serious violations. This is harassment." The judge raised a hand. That may be. But in this courtroom, I'm bound by the contract and the law. You must comply. Pay the fines. If you disagree, your recourse is civil appeals, not defiance. Then came the final order. David was given 30 days to pay the full amount. Failure to do so could result in further legal action, including lien placement, wage garnishment, or contempt of court. After the hearing, David stood outside the courthouse in shock. He felt like a criminal, and for what? Keeping a car in his own driveway. He wanted to scream. To rage. To knock on every neighbor's door and shout, "Is this the community you want to live in?" But he didn't. He went home, sat on his front steps, and watched as the sun set behind the rooftops. He thought about paying the fine. Just giving in. Swallowing the injustice and moving on. But then he remembered Cheryl's cold stare. The smug lawyer. The board member who said, "Maybe this isn't the right community for you." He wasn't going to let them win. The next day, he sent a letter to the HOA via certified mail. "I will not be paying this fine. I refuse to support an organization that uses legal intimidation and petty rules to bully its residents. Do what you need to do, but I will not bend." It took 2 weeks. Then another letter came. This one wasn't from the HOA. It was from the court. David opened it slowly. His hands trembled as he read. Notice of bench warrant. You have failed to comply with the court's order in case CH 2025-1773. As a result, a warrant has been issued for your arrest under contempt of court statutes. You are hereby ordered to present yourself at the Clearwater County Sheriff's Office within 72 hours. He read it again. And again. A warrant. He wasn't just being fined anymore. He wasn't just being sued. He was now officially a wanted man. When he resisted, the judge issued a warrant. It started with a knock just like before. But this time, they didn't hand him an envelope. They came with handcuffs. It was a bright, breezy Friday morning. David was working from home, trying to distract himself, when the doorbell rang. He opened the door and froze. 2 sheriff's deputies stood on his porch. "David McMillan?" "Yes. We have a bench warrant for your arrest. Please step outside." Neighbors peeked through windows. A jogger slowed down across the street. David's heart raced. Wait, is this because of the HOA thing?" The deputy nodded, almost apologetically. "We don't make the rules, sir. You've been held in contempt of court for failure to comply with a legal order. You can sort it out downtown." They cuffed him right there, on his own front porch. No shouting. No struggle. Just silent humiliation. David kept his head down as they walked him to the patrol car, but he still caught sight of Cheryl watching from across the street. Arms crossed. No emotion. Click. Someone snapped a photo. David sat in the cold back seat of the cruiser, stunned. Arrested for a parking fine. At the station, they processed him like any other suspect, fingerprints, mugshot, personal belongings in a plastic bin. They put him in a holding cell overnight, no charges of violence, no theft, no drugs. Just HOA contempt. It was the longest night of his life. The concrete bench. The buzzing fluorescent lights. The quiet whispers from other detainees wondering what he was in for. He told one of them the truth. The guy laughed. "Bro, this country's broken." David was released the next morning on his own recognizance. He walked out in wrinkled clothes, exhausted and hollow-eyed. And that's when he saw the cameras. A reporter from a local news channel was waiting just outside the precinct. "Mr. McMillan, can you tell us why you were arrested? Is it true this is all about a homeowners association fine?" Do you feel your rights were violated? David didn't know what to say at first. But after a pause, he looked straight into the camera and said, "I was arrested for parking my car in my own driveway. For refusing to let a group of neighborhood bullies run my life. That's the truth." And just like that, the story spread. Local man arrested over HOA parking dispute. Jailed for his own driveway, the rules gone too far. Is your HOA next? The story hit local news that weekend. Then regional. Then national. By Monday morning, David's mugshot and HOA drama had gone viral. On Reddit, people shared horror stories of their own HOAs. On Twitter, hashtags started trending. HOA overreach. Free David. Driveway rights. YouTubers and TikTokers made explainer videos. Podcasts covered it. Legal experts weighed in on just how enforceable these HOA contracts were and how few homeowners really understood them. Public opinion was fiercely divided. Some people rallied behind David. This is what happens when unchecked power meets bureaucracy. He's a hero for standing up to them. HOAs are just legal cartels with a landscaping fetish. Others criticized him. He signed the contract. Just pay the fine and move on. Rules are rules. David tried to stay off the internet, but curiosity won. He saw his name in headlines. Saw his front porch in B-roll footage. Saw his arrest used as a meme. The humiliation was still raw, but something else was growing too. Support. People sent messages. Neighbors he'd never spoken to slipped notes in his mailbox. A GoFundMe started by a stranger raised $11,000 in 72 hours titled "Help David Fight the HOA Machine." And how did the HOA respond? Coldly. They released a single public statement, no press conference, no interviews. The Clearwater Heights Homeowners Association enforces rules in accordance with community standards and the signed agreement upheld by all residents. The HOA regrets that Mr. McMillan chose to disregard these standards despite multiple opportunities to resolve the matter privately. No sympathy. No apology. No acknowledgement of the arrest. And absolutely no mention of Cheryl. But behind the scenes, cracks were starting to form. Other residents, quiet until now, began speaking out. One woman shared how the HOA threatened to fine her $200 for planting tomatoes in her backyard. A young couple said they were told to remove their baby's swing set because it was non-standard equipment. The media frenzy had emboldened the neighborhood. The board meetings, once quiet and uneventful, were now packed. Residents demanded transparency, demanded limits, demanded change. And at the center of it all was David. He hadn't asked for it. He didn't want to be famous. He didn't want to be the driveway guy. But the moment they slapped those cuffs on him, his story stopped being just about a parking space. It became about power, control, and how easily your home can become your enemy. David became the face of a fight against HOA overreach. The house still stood. The street still looked the same. But for David, Clearwater Heights was no longer a home, it was a battlefield he'd survived. Just 6 months after his arrest, David stood in his now empty living room. The walls were bare. The furniture gone. The memories too heavy to pack. He had sold the house. Not for profit. Not for a fresh start. But for peace. He took one last walk around the property. The mailbox freshly painted, regulation perfect. The lawn short, crisp, inspected weekly. The driveway empty. He stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, and let out a long breath. So much had happened on that strip of concrete. That's where he used to shoot hoops with his nephew. Where he washed his car on Saturdays. Where he waved to neighbors. Where he was arrested.